Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Hello, welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am so grateful you're here. Truly, truly, truly could not and would not do this without you all. So thank you so much for listening, for sharing, for taking a deeper dive into your own healing process and changing generational trauma. I cannot say enough thank yous and express my gratitude for you being here. Today's episode is about breaking free from people-pleasing, caretaking, and peacemaking. It's a handful. If you have had any of these patterns or struggled with them at all, you're going to want to listen to this episode. This is actually a replay of a conversation I had on our Pathways to Healing Counseling Facebook page with one of our clinicians, Kara Clayton. And it was so good. I was like, we need to put this on the Close the Chapter podcast because I really enjoyed it. I thought Kara shared a lot of helpful information. This will also be on YouTube. So if you want to see her drawing, we will put the YouTube link in the show notes. So you can click on that and you can look at the drawing that she did to illustrate a few points in her talk. And she walks us through the drawing. So you should be able to make sense of it. But if not, and you want to see a visual, because I'm a visual person, you can go to YouTube and watch it. So let me introduce you to Kara. Kara Clayton is a licensed clinical social worker with over 13 years experience in the mental health field. Kara recognizes the courage and strength of each client who seeks counseling. Operating from a client-centered approach and unconditional positive regard for all, she considers it an honor to co-create a therapeutic environment of trust and safety. Clients describe Kara's therapy style as calm, understanding, non-judgmental, insightful, and through meeting with her, they feel heard and accepted. The focus and pace of therapy is flexible and based on individual needs and goals. Kara hopes to empower clients to grow and make the changes they desire in their lives. She works with children, adolescents, adults, and families with diverse abilities and backgrounds. She works with clients working through depression, anxiety, panic, trauma, grief and loss, addictions, ADHD, relationship and boundary issues, questioning identity and purpose, and life transitions. We talk a lot about what she specializes in dysfunctional families, people coming from alcoholic systems, codependency. So this episode is packed full of helpful and practical tools. And at the end, she shares lots of resources. So you're going to want to get a pen and paper to write down the resources or get on Amazon or go to your local library so you can grab these resources. And several of the resources she has listed have been on the podcast. So we're going to link Dr. Kristen Neff and Dr. Jonas Webb onto the show notes so you can go and listen to those episodes, as those are really powerful and helpful, as well as Hillary Jacobs Hendel. We'll link those 3 episodes in the show notes so you can go back as she references those as resources. So here is my conversation with Kara. I hope it's impactful, helpful, meaningful, and really helps you open another way of looking inside yourself to find the healing that you really deserve. Enjoy. So glad you are joining us for today's Facebook Live with Pathways to Healing Counseling. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am joined by Kara Clayton. Yay!
Hello.
Welcome. We are going to tackle one of the most important topics, and that's breaking free, overcoming people-pleasing, peacekeeping, and caretaking. It's something that so many of us struggle with. So let's dive in. Kara, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited you're here and part of the Pathways team. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you specialize in, and how this topic really resonates with you.
Sure. So I'm Kara Clayton, and I've been a therapist for 11 years. I've been in the mental health field since 2007, and I specialize in working with anxiety and depression, developmental trauma and complex PTSD, and family systems that have an alcoholic dynamic or a dysfunctional dynamic or a neurodiversity dynamic. And I also really enjoy working with therapists, doctors, healthcare professionals.
I have to tell everybody a little bit about you, just from my personal experience. You're one of the best clinicians, and you are so wise with your resources. You are filled with so much wisdom and resources on these topics and are so helpful to your clients. So I am so grateful you're here today to share that wisdom with us. So let's dive in. Let's define like people pleasing, caretaking, peacemaking. Let's kind of get a basis for the understanding of those. Can you share more about what do those exactly mean?
Absolutely. So I first want to acknowledge that these can be traits that are strengths. And so we're going to talk today about how they can be patterns that keep us stuck and get in the way. But I want to acknowledge the beauty and the strength in those, that when these are in a healthy way of showing them, it's compassion, it's empathy. Peacekeeping is a profession that we need in our world and that people do. And caregiving, there's so many aspects of that that are so beautiful. And so just acknowledging that these aren't bad things and that we can really honor where they come from. But what we want to focus on here today is how those three patterns can keep us stuck. And so we're looking at how they become unhelpful, when they become inflexible, when it's unmanageable in our life. And it's really programming that we have from earlier on. And now it's keeping us at a point where maybe we feel trapped or we feel like, I don't know what's wrong with me. So I have a couple of definitions that I just pulled from Google, if that's okay.
Sure.
Just to give us kind of a starting point of what these are talking about. And I pulled a couple that resonated with me. And so people pleasing, let's start there. So a people pleaser might be a person who consistently strives to please others, often sacrificing their own wants and needs in the process. And it's also maybe having a need to please others for reasons that might include fear of rejection, insecurities, and the need to be well-liked. So thinking about that as people pleasing. And then I'll just go through all these real quick and we'll unpack them more. Does that sound okay?
Perfect. And if you have questions, anyone that's watching this on live, feel free to write your questions down or comments. We love those. So feel free to put those in the chat if you have questions as they come up, and we'll try to get to those at the end.
Yeah, that's great. And so caretaking, here's the definition I pulled from that one: a behavior associated with codependency, which is another big word we can dive into or not if we feel like we have time today, where a person takes on the role of fixer or rescuer in a relationship. And then with peacekeeping, this one's a little longer, but I like it, so I'm going to read the whole thing. The peacemaker or mediator tries to resolve conflicts and maintain harmony within the family, often, again, at their own expense. They may sacrifice their own emotional needs to provide what they perceive their siblings or parents need. Parents often, I'm going to say inadvertently, create these roles in their children when one of them makes negative or harsh comments about the other parent. Or I'm just adding, there could be a lot of different situations where that accidentally becomes the role. So all of these are a programming that we get usually from very young, where we learn this is the way that is going to be most likely to keep peace in my family, to get me something I need, where I can have inner peace or outer peace. Someone's upset, I can make them feel better. And then that helps me feel more safe, or that helps me feel more secure. So these patterns often start very young. And that's just a couple of definitions to give us a starting point.
Yeah. And would you say, since they start so young, it's hard then when they're adaptive in the younger age, because we feel like we're getting a need met. We feel like we're worth something. We're lovable. We're wanted. We're part of the family. It helps us feel like we're struggling with feeling lovable, that if I just please my mom or dad or primary caregiver, then they show me more affection, words of affirmation, attention. How hard is it to break the pattern, these patterns and these roles?
It really is a hard pattern to break. It's not to say it's an impossible thing. There's a lot of hope. And when we identify that's what I do, then that's the first step of being able to heal. But they really are hard patterns to break because it meets a need in us. It feels so good to help someone else feel good. And we've been doing that since our brain was literally wiring up when we were so tiny a lot of times. And I also want to pull in, there's a Gabor Mate idea. I'd say quote, but he just talks about it. And so he talks about attached versus authentic, and how when children have to choose between being attached to my caregiver or being my authentic self, children are going to choose to be attached. And so we lose a part of ourself. We have to sacrifice a part of ourself in order to be attached. And that being attached might come through these exact patterns of being able to help people feel better, help them feel calm, or I'll just be the easy one. I won't speak up for how I really feel or what I really need, because that might make somebody upset, or I might get in trouble for that. So then we carry those same feelings. We're really disconnected when we're people pleasing, caretaking, and peacemaking. We're really disconnected from our authentic self.
And some people go, well, I don't even know what my authentic self is. I don't even know who I am. Do you think it blocks your ability to kind of connect to like understanding what you want, what you don't want, what you like, what you don't like, your authentic self?
Yes, I do. I think that those are the things that get blocked. I love that list. It's what do I like? What do I prefer? What's my opinion? It shows up even like picking a restaurant as an adult. It's like, where do you want to go eat? It's like, I don't know. Where do you want to go? I'll be happy if you're happy. Truly. And people pleasers truly feel that way a lot of times. I don't want to pick something that you don't like. That would be so much more uncomfortable for me than if we go somewhere that you like. I'll be happier. And so we get disconnected from what we like, what we prefer, what our opinion is. We also get disconnected from how we feel. We get disconnected from our bodies. Our feelings are in our bodies, but just also other needs of our bodies. And it can be relational, emotional needs too. And our voice, being able to really, because we need to be connected to all that list to be able to have a voice and be able to set boundaries and have a strong yes and no.
So let's say someone says, I am a people pleaser. I just want to be liked. I want to feel like I matter. I want you to be happy with me so you won't reject or abandon me. Where does someone begin to even kind of face this and start tending to it?
So I have lots of thoughts, and I'm trying to decide where to go first because I get really excited about this topic. I feel like there's so much hope in naming and working through this topic. So maybe we can just try to get through them all. I want to pick one is I really like talking with clients about yes and no. And I tell them that it's a coin that has two sides, because a lot of times we don't think about it. We don't think about when I say yes to something. A lot of times folks who are people pleasers, peacemakers, caretakers are the yes person in the family, in the group, in the church, wherever. They're the person who says yes to everything. And so we don't think a lot of times. We get overbooked, we get overscheduled, we get worn out and burnt out, but then we just feel like, what's wrong with me? And so every time we say yes to something, we're really saying no to something too. If I say yes to staying up to clean my house late into the night so that it's perfect for the party, I'm saying no to sleep. If I say yes to this committee, I'm saying no to maybe that downtime or just time with my kids that I would have had. And so it's really a coin. And every time we give a yes, we're also giving a no. So we can start to look at, do I have a yes and no problem? Do I not recognize the yeses I'm giving and the nos that are the result of that I didn't mean to say no to, but there's just not time now? And I also think we can have a yes and no problem when we can think about, I'm saying yes on the outside, but what's my inside saying? Is it a no on the inside? I don't really want to be here. I don't really want to be doing this. I want to, but I'm exhausted and I need to just have this downtime. I need to just eat a good meal and go to bed or something. And so to really be able to recognize, is a yes on the outside, what would I have to change to be able to have that be a yes on the inside too? And then we have to have courage to give our no's. We can't have a thorough yes unless we're also giving our no's. And that can be hard. That can be very hard for people pleasers to do.
And it's starting to say, I even encourage clients, I'll say, okay, if someone says, where do you want to go to dinner? And like, I don't know. I don't care. Where do you want to go? I said, give 3 options. Let's start with rumbling through 3 options. Try it on and sit with the discomfort of not going, well, wherever you want to go is good, or whatever you want. Instead, you're going to sit with the discomfort of stepping outside of that role and tolerating that you are giving options. And you might even, if you feel brave enough, say, how about I would love Mexican tonight? How does that sound? Like you're even trying on. So that's that whole trying on, even that dinner example.
Yeah. Little baby steps, little reps. It's even lists. Like, what do I like? What have I been saying yes to for years and I don't even like it? Maybe I say yes to Mexican all the time. I don't even like that food. I do, but maybe somebody doesn't. They say yes to it all the time. So even having lists of what do I actually like? What are the things I've always wanted to do? But because I go along with everyone else, I never do those things. Maybe I'd really like to take a backpacking trip to the mountains, but that never happens because everybody else likes the beach. And so these are just little examples, but it can be anything. It can be very deep stuff. It can be things in our intimate relationships where I really like to be hugged this way, but I've never told you. And it would feel really good. I would feel so connected to you if you could hug me in this way. So it can just even be starting to make lists of what do I actually like? What do I actually dream about or want? What do I actually feel? Making a list of that. What do I need? Do I have any clue? What can I start to collect? And just little baby steps, lots of reps of practicing. Yeah. And I love what you said about it's going to feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I like the list because you're starting to kind of rumble. You're starting to reconnect with yourself and rumble through what do you like and what don't you like. And I have that with couples. I'll have them make a list of their top 10. I like it when you, and then you have to be specific, like vacuum the carpet, empty the dishwasher. I'm making these up, rub my back. You have to think through it because your partner's guessing. And if you don't know, they're going to just keep doing maybe even they like. So it's a real rumble to figure out what you like and what you don't like. So that exercise is really powerful.
I wonder if I could go to a second thing and put something up on the whiteboard. I like to use my whiteboard and just give people a visual.
Let's do that. And then I'll walk through, and you can kind of walk through if someone might be listening and not watching this, you can kind of walk through what you're drawing.
Absolutely. We'll try to describe it as we go. So I want to draw, if this is maybe a continuum, we could say, or it's kind of a simplified version. So if we just call this end of the spectrum selfish, and this is getting to what you were bringing up, Kristen, with if I start to have my opinion, if I start to voice my feelings, needs, wants, it's going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to have to tolerate it. A lot of times, part of the messaging, your feelings or your needs are a problem, or I can't handle them, that we got when we were little. A lot of times the messaging includes that's selfish. If you're just focusing on what you want, or if you're having this big feeling right now, that's selfish. And we internalize that message. And so a lot of times for people pleasers, caregivers, caretakers, and peacekeepers, for these three patterns we're talking about, just holding the place, a lot of times it feels selfish to start to do what we're talking about. And that can be some of the discomfort. But I want to draw this continuum. So if on the left side, we've got maybe someone who is more selfish. And so someone who's selfish, we tend to think about this as the me, I am always a yes, and others are always a no. I'm not thinking of any person I know. I'm not thinking of anything in particular. This is just sort of like an extreme example. It's I'm always a yes, others are always a no. And then if we go to the far right of the continuum, we think of I need to be selfless. If I'm not selfish, I'll be selfless. And then I'll always be giving. I'll always be thinking of others' needs. But what I want to call this far right of the continuum is self-forgetting, because we don't realize that we've forgotten that we're a person in the equation. And so over here, me, I am always a no, and others are always a yes. And that can start to create problems for us. And those problems that creates, that's what brings people to therapy. People don't usually come to therapy because they say, I read something online and I think I'm a people pleaser and it doesn't bother me at all, but I'd like to work on it. No, I've never had anybody come in and say that. It's the problems that self-sacrificing, self-forgetting, self-abandoning, that causes us problems inside, and that causes us problems in our relationships. And those are the things that bring people in. But it can be so difficult to work through. It can be so counterintuitive and confusing in our minds because we don't know how to fix this on our own usually. We just think if I move this direction at all, that feels so selfish. And I know this is causing me some troubles, but I don't know what else to do because anything I can think of seems so selfish. So I just want to draw that up here and kind of put that there is this wall, we could say, or sometimes I like to call it an electric fence that zaps you of guilt, of that old messaging, those old tapes that comes up, that when we try to go this way, where we do self-care, or we're thinking of ourselves some, we get zapped by that and we go, that can't be right. That can't be the answer. Let me go back to people pleasing, caretaking, and peacekeeping, because at least I'm not hurting anyone. At least I know that works. It's predictable. And so what I want to help people look at is that guilt that feels like a crime, that really, considering ourselves a person in the equation, it's not a crime. It's the old messaging that's giving us the guilt, not that that's actually bad. And that both ends of the spectrum really need to move toward the middle. And that's where we can say a yes to us. Now, this is getting messy. My clients know the whiteboard always gets messy, and others can be a yes too. And I really believe that the yes we can give to others, when we give ourselves a yes and take care of ourselves, that's a bigger love. That's a bigger joy. It's an expanded connection that we can have than when we're here. And it's like the relationship gets one-sided a little bit. It's a positive intention, but it gets one-sided. And so when we're really nurturing ourselves, we have a more full cup to pour from to really offer love and care to others anyway. I call this being self-connected and other-connected. And that's in the middle. And so for folks who can't see this, I'm just putting self and other connection in the middle. I'm a yes, others are a yes, and that we really have to take care of ourselves to do that.
So let's talk about the person that says, I am bad. Which is shame, that says, I am a bad person. I am a bad mother. I am a bad wife. I am a bad husband, whatever that is. Because we feel like it's moving in our minds towards selfish, even though it might be self-care, but that shame takes over. It almost freezes us into the patterns. So talk a little bit about shame and the I am bad or I am selfish. It's about you as a person rather than your behavior, your choices.
Yeah, it's so painful. That shame, guilt too. I mean, they're both so painful, and the shame can really spiral us and immobilize us. It freezes us. And so the shame, that makes me think of really the work that we can do in therapy. It's hard to move through shame alone. We need some kind of community. We need safe others. And therapy can really be a place for that. We're going to be able to unpack the timeline of where the people pleasing, caretaking, and peacekeeping, those are a mouthful, where they really came from, and be able to unpack the attachment wounds, be able to unpack the messaging, be able to unpack the unmet needs that child just sort of carried around, and tried to figure out how to deal with those without making anyone mad or upsetting anyone. And so the shame and the guilt really can start to be healed as we unpack and understand and really honor what a brilliant thing that a little kid, that our inner child, our little kid, was able to see. If I hold mom's hand right now, she'll calm down and then she'll hug me. That almost brings tears to my eyes because it's just so much pain for us. We need that hug from mom. And so that's brilliant. That's incredible that a little mind could figure that out, that this is how I can get my need met.
Yeah. So we kind of float back. I think this is an important component to understanding people pleasing, caretaking, peacemaking it really is a birthplace early. You talk about attachment. Can you share, if someone just like, I don't really know what that means, can you share a little bit about what attachment means and how this kind of really can be a birthplace of where we start kind of developing these patterns and these roles?
Sure. Yeah. So we think about, there's a whole theory of attachment. And so this is coming from a body of well-researched work for decades. And so attachment's really, it's the system that we are wired with to survive in the world. We've all heard of fight or flight, but we also, and that's our reptilian brain, but we also have a mammalian brain, and we're wired to be connected. We're wired to have safety and community. And so our caregiver, it can be our mom, it can be our dad, biological, whoever's the primary person who's there to take care of us. These are our attachment figures. And there's lots there we can unpack, but we'll just say the primary person is our attachment figure. And so we're really wired to latch onto that person. And ideally, not everybody has ideally, But ideally, we're able to get our needs met from that person, our basic physical needs, but also our emotional and relational needs that really allow our nervous system to go, oh, I'm safe. I'm cared for. There's somebody bigger than me who's looking out for me, wiser than me. They're there for me. I'm not alone. And so when we don't have those things, or when we have to do some gymnastics to be able to get those needs met as best we can, those can create attachment wounds. And I have so much compassion for parents. I'm a parent. I feel like when we talk about attachment wounds, and it can really bring up some of the shame or the fears that we have as parents, I believe that all parents are doing the best they can and the best they know how to do. And we can really hold this both and space where we can really acknowledge parents are doing the best they can. And I had these unmet needs. And now as an adult, I'm going to do the work to help those heal, where I can build a secure attachment within myself and with safe people around me. That same caregiver, great. But if not, we have these other relationships in our life. We can create safe friendships and safe partnerships and relationships with other people to do this work now so that those old wounds can heal.
Which is such a beautiful gift to give to ourselves and then to break generational trauma. Yeah. I love Peter Levine's quote that how we can find healing is an empathic witness to our pain. And that is like what we were looking for consistently from our primary caregivers. Do you see me? Do you see what I'm feeling? Do you get me? Do you understand me? And do you accept me for who I am? And if the parent, which like you said, I'm a parent too, like I get it. I mean, if we don't do our own work, it's just almost an unconsciousness that can come through. And we can then not see our children's pain and have trouble really honoring our own pain. I think it even begins like to just honor our own pain, to witness it, to have another person sit with us in it. And we relearn what that looks like to offer ourselves love and compassion.
Yes, absolutely. Or learn for the first time, because we may not have felt that before, especially in those deep wounded places that are just sort of frozen in time and don't know. They don't know that we're an adult now, that it's 2024, that it's over. We survived. We made it out. They don't know. And so I absolutely agree with you. We can learn to be able to offer care to those parts and build trust inside, and we can become our own loving parent. It's incredible. It sounds super weird. It sounds like a made up thing, but it's so real.
So powerful. It's the deepest work I've done and I will continue to do. It's hard and I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's the most transformative work. And when we go back and we look at, someone goes, okay, I kind of am rumbling through my people pleasing and I'm really scared to give it up. I'm really scared not to be liked. I'm really scared to upset somebody. I'm really scared to make someone mad. These are younger parts. And I hear this a lot. I don't want them to be, I'm not going to do that because they'll be upset. They're going to get mad at me. They're going to pull away from me. They're going to give me the cold, silent treatment. How do you help people work through the fear of changing that pattern?
Yeah, it's complex. The first thing that pops to my mind, and maybe you have other things you want to add to this, but I just think about being able to access some of that safety inside of ourselves, because that's a big leap to take. To sort of go from, I have this giant fear and now I'm just supposed to go do it or say the thing, like that's a giant leap. And so what popped into my mind first when you said that was just thinking about how we can start really small, and we can start with being able to work with our nervous system. I just go back to tuning into our body, get to know our body, be able to go back to our breath, notice the sensations that are in our body, and be able to feel our way through some of that and be able to learn to create these inner resources where we can find, okay, where's anywhere in my body that feels neutral right now? Let me see if I can tune into that. Okay, I keep getting pulled out of it because, I just have this pit in my stomach. Well, let me keep, it's again, the baby steps, getting the reps in. Let me keep coming back. I'm going to keep coming back to that neutral place and just starting to build up different ways. Maybe that sometimes that body work, people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And maybe it's music, maybe it's nature, maybe it's walks, whatever it is, maybe it's yoga, meditation, whatever it is for people, being able to start to build up what are things I can do that help me to feel safe in my own body. And that can be it is foundational for being able to take on some of those bigger fears. Because then I might take that risk and then I can come back though, and I can know no matter what happened, I can come back to feeling safe within myself, and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to keep working on this.
I love that. And I see you're putting your hand here. I do this too, because I'm like, that helps me anchor, taking a deep breath for me, and everybody's different, to kind of come back into the present moment and help pour some warmth in there. And for me to kind of get back into connection with myself. Because if I'm constantly worrying about what other people think and feel, I'm not connected to my body. I'm not connected to my feelings because I'm worried about what you're thinking. I'll have people come in and they can tell me everything that the other person's feeling and thinking and what they're going to say and what they're going to do. I'm like, let's kind of take a moment and hold some space for you. What do you feel? And it's like, whoa. So just even that, really coming back to yourself, like you said at the very beginning, and starting to explore that. What else can people do if they're like, I really want to work on this. I really want to kind of break through this pattern.
Let's see. We talked about making our lists. We talked about our yes and our no. We're talking about tuning into the body. I don't think I had really touched on this. So just to maybe expand on something we sort of talked about before, getting to know yourself, tuning into your body. I'm a big fan of starting with the basic needs, because just trying to think of how I feel with this specific relationship when they say this, that's a lot. It's hard. It's hard to start there. And so even just thinking of sleep, eating, hydrating, moving my body. Do I rest? Do I play? Do I have good social support? Do I have some way to connect to something bigger than me? To have some of those things and to really notice, that can be a list too. I'm a big list person, as you can tell, but that can be a list too. Write those out. What I just said, write those out. Clothing and shelter. That one might sound silly, but I think a lot of people pleasers, peacekeepers, caretakers, we don't clothe ourselves well. We don't dress ourselves well. We don't replace things when they get worn and ratty. So even thinking about that, write these things out and check the ones where you're doing okay. Like, I do drink enough water. Awesome. Check next to that. And maybe circle the ones where it's like, I really don't eat enough. Like, I forget to eat meals. Okay, circle that one. Or I really don't give myself permission to go to bed at a good time. I feel like I always have to get more done before I can let myself rest. Circle that one. So just kind of going through those and thinking, where do I'm not in tune with my body? It can even be other stuff. Like, do I make myself wait before I go to the bathroom? That might sound silly, but it's really tuning in to what's our body telling us. Our body has urges and cues for all of these things. We get tired, we get hungry, we get thirsty, we need to pee. We have urges for all these things. We feel lonely, we need connection. And so being able to start to notice, what is my body telling me? And even making that list and picking out, okay, I can't tackle all this at once, but what's one I could pick? I'm really going to learn how to have fun. I don't know how to have fun. I'm going to learn 3 things that are fun just for me, not for someone else, but just that I think are fun, or whatever on that list is a good starting point for you.
I love that. I think the basics, like, I know if I don't get sleep, it affects me. I can feel myself being more short, more irritable, less joyful. Like, it really is a key component to my well-being. And so I sometimes say no to things because I know I'm going to have to get up early the next day. And that took me years to kind of really dial into and give myself permission to advocate for my own sleep. And as parents, that's tough because you have activities and you have, bedtimes and meals. And so it's one of those identifying what is one thing you can start keeping a pattern of, and notice your mood, notice how your body feels, notice are you reacting? Are you responding to things? Because I could see myself being more reactive. So I like how you're identifying some of these real important basic needs that are critical that we don't think about.
We don't. And it builds such a relationship with our body. If we tune into that, we are light years ahead in the work of, how do I feel and what do I need right now? So if we just start even with those basics, we've learned so much about ourselves. We've learned what our cues mean. Like, oh, I remember when I learned that little triangle right at the center of the rib cage, that hurts when you're hungry. I remember when I learned that and I was like, it does. And then I started noticing it does. And so even learning, what does it feel like in my body when I have these cues? It's building that relationship. And it's part of that foundation to becoming our own loving parent, because then we're able to nurture our body. And that opens up that doorway for being able to really nurture our emotions and our needs too.
Yes, I had a podcast interview on the Close the Chapter podcast this week. And we were talking about gut health. We were talking about chronic illness. And the answer was like, if you are doing self-care, you're going to prioritize and ramp up self-care. And I thought, ooh, that's hard for people. Moving on your chart, it's moving towards that middle where you're saying, I'm at my best self. I can heal from chronic illness. I can heal my emotional pain. I can get unstuck, have more joy. So it's really starting to notice and get curious about your cues, about your body sensations. And really, even like my eyes and my face, it's hard sometimes to even feel your face, or like your jaw might be tight. Your tongue might be at the top of your mouth and you don't even notice it. Like these are the things, really things I wasn't taught to notice. And so
Same.
Whole new learning.
Absolutely. The tongue's a big one. I remember when I realized that, and then just being like, where does my tongue go? If I don't have it sucked to the roof of my mouth all the time, where should I put that? Where's the tongue go? And so just even learning, oh, this is what it feels like when that's relaxed.
Yes. I
nice.
took a class and they're like, and relax your tongue, take it off the top of your mouth. And that's where I started noticing, oh, it is like that cue opened me up into another place I hadn't even gotten curious about or even noticed. These small things do make a difference in understanding yourself and breaking free. Yeah. We think, well, how is this really going to help me? It's because you're more connected rather than disconnected from self. If you're paying attention to another person more than you are yourself, that's when I tell clients, I'm like, okay, that's a cue. You're so used to it to survive, to like prepare if someone's going to be upset with you, to keep yourself safe. You had to be hyper vigilant. You had to predict the next move, had to keep the peace so no one would get dysregulated. And now as an adult, we're really holding space to kind of really notice these things that we didn't really pay attention to or didn't have the bandwidth to even notice. No one was cueing us to notice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's rewiring. We're rewiring the nervous system. We're rewiring the brain. And it's so clunky at first. I like to say it's like you're used to traveling on 465 and now we're going to make this little exit ramp and it's just going to be really bumpy at first. It's not going to be a smooth, wide interstate at the beginning. It's going to be bumpy. It's kind of drops in the bucket, really rewiring and building what we need so that we can heal.
I love the metaphor of a garden too. Like if you're going to plant something and then you don't water it, and you don't tend to it, you don't prune it, you just kind of let it just sit there. And that's sometimes the metaphor of kind of how we've treated ourselves because that's what we got. And so we didn't know any better. And so it's like thinking of us as a garden. How do we want to pour into ourselves so it grows, so it heals, so it thrives and it flourishes?
Yeah.
What would you say are your most helpful resources if someone says, I want to really work on this. I want to break free from people pleasing, caretaking in that way, and peacemaking. What would you say are your top resources?
You know, I've got a list.
I know. That's why I was like, you're going to come with a wonderful plethora of options. And I love this about you.
Oh, I'm happy to share them. And I'm probably forgetting some, but the ones that were top of my mind, I thought first of Dr. Kristin Neff. And she is a self-compassion researcher. She has a fantastic website with all of these free meditations and exercises on self-compassion. And they're really accessible. Like she has her basic guided meditation is called a self-compassion break, and it's 5 minutes. And you can just play it and you can just kind of sit and follow along and you get the idea of what she's doing. And she has all these different ones. And so she also has books. She has lots of things out there, but I really like that free website she created for resources for people. It's so accessible. And so you can begin to practice this mindful self-compassion which is really just a fancy way of saying I'm aware of what's happening inside and I'm meeting it with warmth. So I really love her work, Dr. Kristen Neff. And then I think Dr. Jonice Webb, who talks about childhood emotional neglect, is a great resource in what we're talking about today. She's coined that term, and I know you've had her on your podcast.
And Kristen Neff, Dr. Kristen Neff.
Oh, great. So people could go and listen
to the Close the Chapter podcast. Both of them have been on and they're fantastic.
That's great. Yeah. And she's got, I think, 2 books. She's on YouTube. Dr. Jonice Webb's on YouTube. She's got an email newsletter. And so people can check her out and just kind of see what she's talking about, because these different forms of abuse or neglect that we're familiar with, but nobody really thinks about emotional neglect. Yeah. And so she just talks about what that is and how it affects people and how you can heal from it. So she's got some great things. I also am a huge fan of Bruce Perry and Oprah's book, What Happened to You? I love it on audio. The 2 of them read it together. It's kind of grounding as you're taking on this hard topic, because they really are unpacking complex PTSD. That's really what they're talking about. And they're just helping kind of guide you through what are some ways that happens for people. Oprah tells her story and then how to heal from that. So I really like that book. And I also am a huge fan of 12-step groups, Al-Anon groups, adult children of alcoholics or ACOA groups. There's an author named Tion Dayton, and she has a book called The ACOA Trauma Syndrome, which if someone grew up in an alcoholic family, this is a great book to check out. If you're like, I don't know about a 12-step group, I encourage you to just try it. You can try an online one. But even if you're like, I don't know, I just want to get a feel for what this is, check out that book, The ACOA Trauma Syndrome. And it really unpacks what happens, what's the impact of growing up with an alcoholic parent? How does that affect the child? And how does that affect the whole family? So those are some of my top ones. And then I always recommend It's Not Always Depression by Hillary Jacobs Hindle at Pathways. We love that book. I think we recommend it to everyone.
Dr. Podcast, she's amazing. Yeah, we
really is.
I think with every client for the most part.
I do. I think I recommend it to everybody at the intake, or I try to. Her section in there, the whole book's fantastic, but she has a chapter on guilt. And the exercise she has for guilt is so helpful for what we were talking about today. And that drawing I did, how to work through the guilt, helping yourself think through, is this really a crime? Is taking care of myself, is considering myself a person in the equation, is that really a crime? Or is it okay? And to work through the guilt of that. And she talks about shame too. She's got some great things in that book.
She does. I also like Melody Beattie's work, Codependent No More. And then you want a daily kind of reflection. I like Journey to the Heart as well. This is a great kind of each day she has a different topic. And I think that's great for if you're working on that codependency, prioritizing how you feel and reconnecting to yourself. Those are also good resources. Those are amazing resources. Thank you so much for sharing. If someone's like, I really love Kara and I would like to work with Kara, tell us how people can work with you and if you're taking clients and all those wonderful things.
Yes, thank you for asking. So I have some openings now. So if someone was looking to get in, they can contact Pathways to Healing Counseling. They can go to our website. They can email, or our phone number's on there. They can reach out. They're going to get a hold of Taylor, who's wonderful, and she will help them through the intake process. And then we'll be able to meet and start working together. I can see anyone located in Indiana via telehealth.
And I highly recommend Kara. And let me tell you, I see my therapist via telehealth. At first, I was like, telehealth? I don't want to see my person online. I'm telling you, I am a fan. I am a big fan. So if you're hesitant and you're like, I don't know, I only want to do in person, I say give it a try. Give it a try. Give it at least a couple of sessions, 3 sessions. I love it personally, and I enjoy it. I don't feel any different. So just so those folks know that if you're interested in seeing Kara, highly recommend her. And you are so worth it and so filled with so much core wisdom, and you do your own work. And I think that really makes such a difference in the client therapist relationship. So
thank you for saying all that. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And the phone number for Pathways is 317-316 3077 if you are interested. And then pathwaystohealingcounseling.com if you want to get on there and you want to look at Kara's profile. And you can also fill out a form if you're interested in seeing her. If you kind of want to go that route, that's fine too. If you don't want to call, you can always go fill out the form, submit it, and go from there. And then Taylor will reach out to you. So Kara, thank you so much for your time, your heart, your love, your compassion, and your wisdom, and for sharing it with us today.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Yes, this was a lot of fun. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.